Hello, you. I have a question to ask you. Have you been to San Francisco or any other major city like New York or Los Angeles and notice how different everybody looks compared to the rest of the world? Hi, my name is Juan Camilo Perez, and today I am going to be talking about how immigration has impacted the city of San Francisco and how immigrants deserve more respect in our country. For this video, we are going to be looking specifically at Asian immigrants in the San Francisco Bay Area. By doing this, we will talk about how redlining has impacted the city and restricted Asians in living into certain roles, discrimination that has affected immigrants over the years, like, for instance, the wave of Asian hate crime seen during the pandemic, how they have contributed to our economy, the founding principles of our nation, plus the irony that discrimination brings to those principles, and finally, how organizations like APAC believe we can help them improve their conditions as well. And then in the end, I'll give my thoughts and opinions on the topic.
I was brutally attacked and brutally assaulted on November 2nd, 2019.
This man says he was just waiting for the bus outside this Asian market in Chinatown when he was assaulted with a bat by two men.
I wanted to start off the discrimination part of this video with this clip because it shows how these unacceptable actions in San Francisco were happening frequently, even to older citizens that didn't really do anything. And it also shows how many problems that the coronavirus has created around the world at that time, and how immigration was one of the things that was impacted because immigrants were given a crucial blow when it came to immigration rate during the time period due to growing fears over, the spread of the coronavirus disease with new cases popping up all over the place. Asian hate crimes during the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic were rampant in cities all across the United States, including San Francisco, as you can see in this clip. And this ties into the idea of discrimination against immigrants. And in this case, in San Francisco's Chinatown, which is notorious for being made up of, well, Chinese immigrants looking for a better life in America. I mean, to be fair, it also didn't help that our president at the time was saying stuff like,
You don't hear them talking about COVID. COVID. To be specific, COVID-19. That name gets further and further away from China as opposed to calling it the Chinese virus. Kung flu. I can name 19 different versions of names.
yeah, this affects the Asian community as a whole, but in this case, it specifically targets Asian immigrants of Chinese descent with hateful diction and actions used to deter these innocent people from interacting with each other, and especially with other Americans due to their heritage. These types of actions cause social rifts and further distrust in the Asian American community, making them feel more isolated from their peers. And we'll delve into this deeper later on in the video, but thanks to organizations like Chinese Culture Center, people volunteered to wait outside Asian-owned businesses to ensure these attacks wouldn't occur any longer. Okay, redlining. Redlining can be seen everywhere in the United States. It is the main contributor to why groups of people are grouped together due to things like culture or race instead of a more even mix. The government and companies alike are responsible for contributing to discriminating against foreign-born and differently colored native-born Americans by putting them into less desirable, and that's in quotes, neighborhoods, and not investing into these neighborhoods, causing more discrimination and things like wealth gaps. You can see the effects of redlining in San Francisco with things like Calle 24, which is the Latino district, Little Italy, Chinatown, and Japantown, all being relics of these old zoning laws. And while nowadays these places are pretty popular to visit, but like many other things, this rebranding was done merely trying to cover up its darker past. How does this redlining affect Asian immigrants nowadays? Redlining affects immigrants by grouping them up with fellow immigrants who are new to the country, thus making it harder to adapt and, in some cases, assimilate into the American culture. While mostly in the past, moments can still be felt in the modern day era, where discrimination against immigrants due to factors like race and redlining exemplified that racial bias by grouping people into communities that were, by the start, meant to have less success than mostly white communities. Okay, so for redlining, I am going to use how does geography matter in the ethnic labor market segmentation process, a case study of Chinese immigrants in the San Francisco CSMSA, which is all about the struggles immigrants face, more specifically Chinese, when they reach San Francisco. It talks about how things like redlining and closeness to work has a negative effect on all immigrants looking for work in San Francisco. When Wang, who is the author, states all these studies suggest that the geography of residence and geography of jobs affect labor market outcomes both spatially and socially through the employer's recruiting practices or job seekers' active search behaviors. All these studies suggest that the geography of residence and geography of jobs affect labor market outcomes both spatially and socially through the employer's recruiting practices or job seekers' active search behaviors, which can be found on that document on page 2. He explains how it affects immigrant job seeking ventures in a negative way. That's redlining, by the way. This helps my point by explaining how even if immigrants do benefit the US overall, they are being sectioned off by the rest of the city and are given unfair circumstances to try and catch up to their local or native born peers. So, for arguing for the founding principles and comparing theology to reality, the United States was founded and has always been a nation created by immigrants. Unlike other nations like France, who had fought wars to unite smaller, similar speaking language states to create their nation, or a country like Japan that shared the same language and culture due to isolation on an island, the United States is a nation that was created on an idea. That idea being a nation for the people and by the people. That nation was founded by immigrants, and it was for immigrants. Yet, that idea was flawed from the moment the founding fathers had signed the Declaration of Independence. From the implementation of chattel slavery since the founding of the nation, to later, the horrific march that was the Trail of Tears, to, in more recent memory, internment camps built for the Japanese immigrants during World War II, or in even more recent memory, just a couple years ago actually, the wave of Asian hate crimes during the COVID-19 pandemic. If you look at it this way, it doesn't take a genius to see that these principles were never kept since its inception. Yet, immigrants don't come to the United States. The reason they believe those founding principles, that all are equal and that everybody has an equal shot to the American dream, that has been promised for God who knows how long. The core of America as a whole is a nation built on immigrants, and that principle cannot be forgotten. Okay, so let's go back to what I had mentioned earlier about local associations in San Francisco and how they try to tackle these problems. So, the city of San Francisco has been a hub for immigration, especially those of Eastern descent, since the opening of Angel Island in 1910. As previously mentioned, the city of San Francisco is a city that has been through many problems when, at, when it has come to things like redlining, discrimination toward minority communities, especially Asian ones, in the most recent years. With places like the Chinese Culture Center promoting Chinese artists and helping tackle the issues of Asian hate during the hate wave by having members stand guard outside of Chinese owned businesses so they wouldn't get raided or destroyed. Or for the redlining situation, the Asian Pacific American Community Center, or APAC for short, helps lower income immigrants and especially children help learn English as a second language and help financially burdened immigrants with donations. These social services help mitigate the ever growing financial gap between these Asian communities compared to their Caucasian counterparts. So, in the beginning of this video, I made a fuss about Asian American immigration in San Francisco and how their poor treatment, whether it be from geopolitical or social reasons, I haven't stated why it matters. Earlier in the year, I had done a research paper on the conditions that immigrants face when first moving to America, and how the negative stigma of immigrants set them far behind their native peers due to either lack of chance or opportunity to improve their lives. It turns out that high skilled immigrants, on average, contribute more to the United States economy, with, as Bernstein said in their paper called The Contribution of High Skilled Immigrants to Innovation in the United States. Immigrants, however, produce about 23% of total innovation, as we find the average immigrant is substantially more productive than the average US born inventor. Whether it be from ideas to investment, immigrants on average bring more to the table than their US born peers. The reason why I bring this up is because Asian Americans are actually the highest earning of their immigrant peers, besides Europeans, which comes to show that they are contributing a lot more to the economy than we give them credit for. It also doesn't help that, according to a USC study, 32% of Asians are underpaid and overqualified for their jobs, meaning they don't really earn what they deserve, which isn't right. The fix here isn't as simple as just raising the wages for migrant workers by making it equal to natives, but this phenomena is also affected by things like redlining and discrimination, which is not what I would define as all men are created equal. So, what are my thoughts on everything I talked so far? Well, discrimination is obviously, it's part of the past and it should probably just, come to an end. But when it comes to things like redlining, that's a little bit trickier because it's kind of embedded in our society. And it's really hard to change zoning laws nowadays. So that's a little bit harder to tackle, but I like what, APAC are doing where they're helping out like people who can't really afford to live in those neighborhoods and teach them uh like American culture and English and all that good stuff. And then with founding principles, I do think still that it's a little bit hypocritical nowadays, uh, especially, in more recent memory with all the like bans and like discrimination and all that, like the BLM uh, protests and riots and all that. I feel like the founding principles are contradictory to the reality ever since its inception. So, and then finally, the local associations, I already talked about the APAC, but for the Chinese Culture Center, I think they're doing a great job at promoting like Chinese culture, especially since they're becoming more and more prominent, I guess, on the world stage, is a good way of putting it. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed uh, because this took a while to make. And, talking about the immigrant contributions and I guess the Asian contributions and how they are so important to the economy and just to our society as a whole is, I think, a really important thing to discuss, especially nowadays. So, yeah, thank you so much for watching.